Hemos cambiado cosas en el coche, pero bueno, positivo hay muy poco, ¿no? La verdad es que no hemos tenido ritmo en todo el finde y tampoco lo tenemos ahora en esta sprint race. Todavía nos quedan algunos cambios por hacer de cara a la crono, a intentar encontrar un poco de ritmo. Y luego mañana en carrera igual llueve, todo puede pasar, ¿no? Así que hay que estar siempre atentos y empujar, pero bueno, llevamos como 8 carreras más o menos siendo el octavo, noveno equipo, seguimos siéndolo, no va a cambiar y en las próximas 3 te adelanto ya que vamos a estar en la cola de la parrilla también.
The sprint race at the Brazilian Grand Prix marked a turning point for Fernando Alonso and Aston Martin, with the team using the session more as an opportunity to test configurations and gather data than to compete for positions. Alonso, who finished in a disappointing 18th place, didn't hold back in expressing his frustration and resignation after a day where the car's lack of pace and limitations became all too clear. In a post-race interview, the Spanish driver offered a candid and realistic analysis of the team's situation, addressing not only the performance struggles in Interlagos, but also the outlook for the remainder of the season. From the outset of his comments, Alonso was blunt. "We've changed some things on the car, but honestly, there's very little positive, right?" With this statement, Alonso hinted that despite the team's ongoing efforts to improve the car's performance, the results simply aren't materializing. Over the weekend, Aston Martin made several changes to the car's setup, hoping to close the gap with the midfield teams, but the gains have been minimal. Alonso's choice of words, pointing out that there's very little positive, reflects the frustration of a driver who's used to fighting for top positions, but is now struggling at the back of the grid. The lack of pace has become a recurring issue for Aston Martin in recent races, and Alonso didn't hesitate to acknowledge it. "We haven't had pace all weekend, and we didn't have it in this sprint race either." This statement puts into perspective just how far the team has fallen compared to the strong performance they showed at the beginning of the season, when Aston Martin looked capable of competing with the big teams. Interlagos, with its technical track and challenging corners, laid bare the weaknesses of the car on a circuit where cornering speed and stability are crucial. However, for Aston Martin, the sprint session was more about testing for future developments than a real opportunity to score points. In his analysis, Alonso mentioned that the team will continue making adjustments ahead of the qualifying session, though without expecting any miracles. "We still have some changes to make for qualifying, to try to find a bit of pace." This statement suggests that while the team isn't giving up, they're also realistic about the limits of what they can achieve. Alonso and his team are using every minute on the track to make technical adjustments and gather data, in an attempt to find any small improvements that might bring them closer to the midfield. However, the driver is aware that the gap is significant and that their rivals have made more consistent progress in recent weeks. Despite this somewhat bleak analysis, Alonso still holds out a glimmer of hope for Sunday's race. In Interlagos, the weather can change rapidly, and Alonso seemed prepared to seize any opportunity that could arise in challenging conditions. "Tomorrow in the race it might rain. Anything can happen, so we have to stay alert and push." This statement reflects Alonso's experience and resilience, knowing that on a circuit as unpredictable as Interlagos, a wet race could level the playing field and open up possibilities for those who know how to make the most of the conditions. Aston Martin's strategy for Sunday will clearly focus on staying alert and taking advantage of any opportunity in a race that could bring unexpected weather conditions. However, in a moment of complete honesty, Alonso addressed the underlying issue that Aston Martin faces. "We've been the 8th or 9th team for about 8 races now. We still are, right?" With this statement, Alonso exposed the team's stagnation over the past few months, where they've gone from being contenders to barely holding on in the lower midfield. This trend has become increasingly obvious, and Alonso didn't shy away from highlighting the harsh reality of Aston Martin's current performance. With this comment, he implies that while other teams have moved forward, they seem to be stuck in a performance zone that is neither competitive nor inspiring for someone with Alonso's ambition. For many fans, seeing Alonso in this situation is disheartening, especially after the promising start to the season. Alonso is known for his adaptability and his skill at extracting the most from any car. But this time he seems to be trapped in a machine that simply doesn't meet his expectations. This situation is especially tough for a driver who returned to Formula One with the goal of competing and scoring points, but who finds himself fighting in secondary positions instead. Finally, Alonso gave a sobering conclusion about what to expect in the final 3 races of the year. It's not going to change in the next 3. I can already tell you that we'll be at the back of the grid too. With this statement, the Spanish driver made it clear that hopes of a significant improvement in Aston Martin's performance are practically nil. This realism could be seen as a way to release pressure and manage expectations for both the team and himself, but it's also a message to the team, emphasizing the need for significant changes in the car's development. In summary, the Brazilian Grand Prix sprint race served as a reminder of the challenges Aston Martin is facing. Alonso, always candid, made it clear that the team is in a tough spot with no immediate solutions in sight. Nevertheless, despite the difficulties, the Spanish driver remains ready to seize any opportunity, especially on a track as unpredictable as Interlagos. Alonso heads into the final races of the year with his usual determination, though with a realistic perspective of what he can expect in a season-ending stretch that will be more about resilience and pride than podium glory.